What if I told you there is a hidden world of gaming just waiting to be unlocked? And that it doesn't going to be requiring to buy you a brand new PS5 or Xbox. Prepare to be amazed as I review how to transform a humble component into a retro gaming powerhouse. This isn't just a build, it's a journey into gaming, nostalgia, and you don't want to miss out. In the world of retro emulation, there are so many different ways we can go to when it comes for trying to play old school games. You're going to be amazed how many different ways I've been testing out to see what we can do and how far we can push it. So when it comes to just having all kinds of different, let's say, components, we also have like these plug and play solutions, and some of them are like incredible affordable. And I think that is one of the cool things of retro emulation. It doesn't need to be a lot of money you need to spend, and you have like absolutely a crazy amount of different emulators and games that can be emulated through a different kind of system. In this video I just wanted to do an overview, just a quick look into what kind of options we have and what is actually fun and just affordable in this case. So in the first step I was just looking into what kind of options do we have when it comes to the CPU. Yeah, emulators do utilize a lot of CPU power, and if like multiple cores and also multiple threads, we're going to be having of course an overall better performance. But for the affordable way, I was just looking and deep diving into all kinds of mainboards, CPUs I had laying around, but also when it comes to just mini PCs, I had like a built-in processor. And I was quite surprised to see how much performance we can actually get from just a really affordable solution, or in this case, a really old school PC. But another thing we don't need to forget is the GPU itself, because the GPU can give us a very nice emulation boost. Not particularly when it comes to the emulator itself, but more if you want to upscale. So you have like old games that need to be looking better. Most of the time we're going to be needing a GPU because the onboard, let's say GPU on the CPUs, particularly with mini PCs, they are not great at all. And if you're going to be building a desktop PC or a mini PC, some of them do have the option to actually add on a new GPU. And in this case, we do have a little bit better performance in an affordable way, because some GPUs are really cheap now and they are so much better than just the onboard GPU that comes with it. However, I've been testing out some, let's say, Intel combination with NVIDIA GPUs built in. These things were actually made out of, let's say, laptop technology, but those things are not affordable and they're like super expensive. So I'm not going to be talking about this particular model or the other one that I've reviewed some time ago with a really powerful RTX card. So when it comes to the CPU and the GPU, I just wanted to give a couple of very cool, let's say, solutions that are really affordable and we can do some really cool things with this. And in the end, for not a lot of money. But if you want to have a mini PC, or in this case a desktop PC, this for having better cooling solutions, having the option to implement a GPU for not, let's say, a lot of money, this way you can actually build it fairly easy and not a lot of money. I've been finding some cases in thrift shops for a couple of bucks and you can just really cool rebuild something, and sometimes they even already utilize a mainboard, and in this case you can actually get yourself something going on and having a very cool overall solution for building yourself an affordable emulation machine, including some really good cooling with it. But for booting up the software, that is of course another thing. We can use just Windows with separate emulators and a front end like Lunchbox, Hyperspin or Retrobed, or we can use Batocera and we're going to be making a Linux based kind of device that we can play all kinds of games with. Of course we have all kinds of plug and play solutions too, that we can just plug in a controller and you're ready to go. Or get yourself like an old hard drive and you can just install Batocera on there and configure everything as you wish. But in my case, we do have all kinds of different other solutions. We can just implement a 2.5 inch drive, install Batocera on there. You can use a USB stick or an SD card if your device even has a USB reader built in, like some of the mini PCs. And in this way we can just do it even almost for free. Yep, you can go to the Batocera page, we can actually download the image. You're going to be flashing it with Belina Archer or Win32, and in this way we can actually get yourself something going on when it comes to your simple x64 let's say desktop PC, or you just want to have like a mini PC. They have a crazy wide range support of different kind of systems, even handhelds if you want to, and in this way we can just actually install it on a certain storage device and we can just play and add all of your games. And that is kind of cool, and one of the many ways you can play Batocera, which you can also see on the page itself. But you can also not use Batocera at all. You can just build yourself a Lunchbox image, going to be using just Windows itself, and you can just easily add yourself your Windows game, but also if you want to get into some emulation. But if you're going to be getting the hang of it when it comes to Lunchbox or all kinds of tutorials out there, they made your life so much easier if you want to add emulators. A lot of stuff has been automatically configured, so that's just a super easy way to just play your old school games through your Windows device. Yeah, and I think that is one of the other ways to go to, where I am a huge fan of Batocera. But if you still want to have all kinds of, let's say, Windows features, think about if you want to play Windows games and add them to your image. Yep, that is going to be one of the things you can do, is just use Windows. And in this case, we could just absolutely enjoy yourself emulation, but also Windows gaming. But with the game stick box thingies, we also had these PlayStation 2 knockoff chemical controllers, and yeah, they were sometimes okay. Yeah, playing a retro emulation, and at least you want to have a little bit of a retro vibe going on. These things were not really great. I must say some of them did, like this one has the very nice analog controls, but in overall these things were pretty cheap and not really great. But throughout the years I've been checking out all kinds of different controllers. For example, this Bitop fighting pad. I'm a huge fan of fighting games, beat 'em ups, and this was absolutely a blast to the past, because this was similar to those Street Fighter Mad Catz controllers that I ever checked out. You can just go to settings, configure this, and just have yourself a new controller attached to your emulator on Windows, or in this case Batocera. And yeah, the configuration of the 6-button layout was absolutely amazing, and have every single button you're going to be needing for actually playing some games. If it's modern games like PlayStation 1, of course we don't have an analog stick, but this is purely for fighting and some different games. But with all of the kind of different emulators we've tested out here on the channel, one of the things I always do is grab myself an Xbox 360 controller. By the way, if I'm going onto a flea market, or I'm going to be on, let's say, a retro gaming convention, I can find one in pristine condition, an Xbox 360 controller, it's coming home, because this is this is actually my #1 controller. And it's just really compatible with all kinds of different operating systems. And I think particularly we're going to be looking into Windows and separate emulators. They're easy to be recognized automatically, or you can just set them up with ease. So overall, the Xbox 360 controller is absolutely one of my favorite ones to use, with all kinds of different colors. But if you're going to be searching for them used, yeah, it's going to be also a challenge. You find them on AliExpress. Okay, overall quality versions, but when it comes to compatibility, but particularly when it comes to the overall feel, they're always slightly off when it comes to that. Where we have all kinds of stuff from AliExpress or old stuff, we also have brand new stuff like Abido, stuff that is actually quite good. I must say that I am really pleased with my Abido controller, the M30 that I'm using for my Sega Genesis, but we have all kinds of different editions for Windows, and we can use them for emulation without any problem at all. But when it comes to X input, that is one of the things I normally always search for. And with a simple reason, if you have already a ready to go image or ready to go PC that has been set up with X input with Windows or Batocera, you're just most of the time just plug in the controller and it automatically works, or most of the time. And that is one of the things I'm always looking into. Let me know in the comments what kind of controllers do you prefer. So what we can actually do for the first thing is actually building yourself a complete desktop. It can be an ITX, a mini ITX, it can be all kinds of form factors. I had a lot of cool parts laying around, 60GB DDR, I had an Intel CPU, an i7, but also all kinds of different GPUs. And if you're going to be slapping everything together, you can just get yourself a cheap case from the thrift shop or somewhere else, maybe on some second-hand marketplace. Get yourself a good power supply, that is very important. And in this case, we have a very fun overall experience, maybe with emulation. And another thing I picked up from the thrift shop was some time ago, I made even a test bench out of it. I think it was a 3rd generation i7. So if you're going to be looking into Intel's, let's say, different kind of models, take consideration there are a lot of different sometimes. I mean, when you're going to be looking into, let's say, different kind of core i3, i5, i7 or i9s. And in this case, I had an i7 3rd generation, or the 3770. I bought an old school desktop PC and I added myself the GTX 560 Ti. This is not the latest model, but hey, it's a better GPU than actually the one that is on board.
Round 1. Fight!
Alright, so next up, PlayStation Portable. Let's try this out on 8 times the original resolution.
One. Fight! I must return fire!
Well, you're gonna run out of time. Hey, quick! Hey, I got company. Congrats, I want to go first. Don't speak up at once. Whoa! Yes! Let's do this! Battle 1, fight!
Next up, let's try GameCube on the Dolphin emulator. And what I did notice that I can run most games on 720p, but some of the games I need to lower it to the native resolution to get better performance.
Round 1. Fight!
With new Windows coming out, a lot of e-waste coming to, let's say, the marketplace with the PCs nobody can actually use anymore. This can be an absolutely great opportunity to just find some old random setup, slap a GPU card in it, and look at it. You can even play a lot of cool games through main, but also have like a little bit of an upscaling situation. And if you're getting a better GPU, you can even get yourself better overall upscaling emulation. Slap this thing into a case, of course depending on what kind of, let's say, form factor you actually bought, but in this way we can just play all kinds of emulation in a very affordable way, where I almost paid nothing for the GPU and the CPU in the mainboard kit and everything. And if you're going to be combining this with a cool controller, yeah, there would another very cool way to play if you want to build yourself a retro gaming emulation machine, or in other words, a retro beast. You're not a tech savvy and you don't want to tinker that much, there are actually some options. I've reviewed here on the channel a mini PC B-Link solution that came in different kind of variations and do have the option actually to implement a GPU. In my main review I actually tested it out with a GTX 1660 Super, but of course this also utilized RTX cards. This is like a plug and play solution, and if you're going to be combining this with the right software, you can just emulate all kinds of cool stuff or just play Windows games. And with the dedicated, let's say, graphic docking station, in this way we can just have like a very easy plug and play solution where have enough CPU but also with GPU power. And the question is, what kind of emulation do you actually want to have? Because when it comes to, let's say, buying GPUs, they are really cheap, but the overall GPU and CPU combination with the B-Link was like a very non-affordable way to play. But of course in this way we can emulate all kinds of different stuff, have no problems, and of course we can do a little bit of an upscaling too. But maybe we forget about the B-Link, it's not an affordable way to play, or maybe secondhand somewhere. But right out of the box, what can we actually do? We have all kinds of used GPUs, low profile and normal size, that can give it a little bit of a boost to have a little bit of an upscaling and overall better performance emulation. And HP ProDesk has like this very cool low profile GPU support, but also this massive case that are quite cheap to get with older Intel CPUs. And in this case we can actually play all kinds of cool games. And this is another cool way to implement a GPU and still have some overall good performance. But we're going to be looking into, let's say, what kind of CPUs, GPUs. It's all like how affordable is it and how big is your budget. But you do have all kinds of low profiles, and if you're getting a bigger case or building your own mini PC, yeah, it's going to be of course a way better solution to get like a normal size, because they have, like in my opinion, more power, and they come even with a more affordable price, and they're way easy to find. So I've been buying all kinds of 1050 Ti's or 1660 mini versions. They're having less performance, but still they have like enough power to do a little bit of upscaling. I already shown you before with the old school 560 Ti with the previous build. We're going to be using the G5 model, the smaller version, with the GT 1030. And this combination is quite interesting with dual channel 8GB memory and having the i5 8600 model. Interesting contender was the Sega Dreamcast, having Dead Alive 2 on 3840 by 2880. And if you're going to be switching to the GPU performance or adding the 1030, here we can even find that we're having some insignificant improvement. Sega Dreamcast was the same story, and I was quite surprised also here that we have such a significant upgrade too with a different GPU. And I think with different emulators you still have like different results maybe. However, with the Sonic Adventure 2, like having around 40-30 frames per second, you can see we have an upgrade now to around 50. Still not 60 FPS, but makes the game so much more playable on the higher resolution. So also here, this cheap 1030 GT is an amazing upgrade for Sega Dreamcast. And now we can even lower a little bit of the resolution to get a full 60 FPS. Performance was the PlayStation 1, and let's say Chris Team Racing having 4K rendering on the onboard GPU, that's absolutely nuts. So with, let's say, the GPU implemented, I just want to do a little bit more upscaling, and let's go to 11 times resolution, and having now even higher resolution and the same performance. So with the GPU you have like a lot of cool stuff going on with PlayStation 1, and going to the PlayStation 2 in here, yeah, we had like a little bit stuttering on 1080p, and again it's an older GPU on board. It's still amazing what we can actually do by getting into the 1080p again with the 1030 GT. Yeah, we has like a very nice stable overall gameplay. So you can see that has like a significant upgrade for PlayStation 2 as well. Portable is another device that requires a lot of power from the GPU if you're going to be upscaling it to 10 times resolution. The reason I love to do this is a simple reason, because I think it looks absolutely amazing, because these games were made for a tiny screen. So with the 1030 GT CPU we did have like a little stuttering on certain part of the games, but I did notice we had like some overall way better performance, because at the first time it was not playable at all. So N64, it's just amazing to see that we can play this game on many game boxes now on native resolution. But if you're going to be doing it on, let's say, the 4040 resolution, this runs just great on the onboard GPU. But implementing a GPU now, we can do some crazy resolution and have no problem whatsoever. But if you don't want to build a full PC, so HP ProDesk has some really cool versions out there. And again, you need to experiment with what kind of GPU is more affordable for you, and also what kind of ProDesk can you actually find, and what kind of form factor do you find most interesting. But this is more like an easy way, plug and play. You can just grab the thing, slap in a GPU, and have some overall great performance, and build yourself your amazing emulation machine, and even with a little bit of upscaling options. But if you just want to build yourself a PC retro emulation beast, but you don't want to tinker with parts, you don't want to get yourself a ProDesk and add a GPU because you really don't care about those things, yeah, we do have like all kinds of cool mini PC solutions getting cheaper and cheaper throughout the years. Gigabyte Bricks was actually one of those, like say, devices. I purchased like the i3, i5, i7, and if you're going to be deep dive into the rabbit hole, looking around, let's say, in thrift shops, you can add yourself like a retro bed if this thing is pre-installed with Windows, or get yourself something that is ready to go and plug and play drive I already mentioned before. But in this way we can just add and play thousands of different games. But don't forget is that when it comes to like the CPU combination you're going to be buying, because we have all kinds of generations, and of course some generation have a slightly better GPU on board, also giving you overall better performance if you want to do any upscaling at all. But if you don't want to do any upscaling, still the CPU is an important element, so double or triple check what kind of version you're going to be having when you're going to be finding one, what kind of generation, i3, i5 or 7, and also how many cores and threads it will actually have. With this 6th generation i7 having 4 actually cores running on a max frequency of 3100 MHz. So that is very important if you're going to be emulating, let's say, newer generation stuff like PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, stuff like that. See that it is actually playable, but I think if you're going to be having let's say, more demanding game than Castlevania, it's not going to be an overall great performance. You can see that we do have a playable situation over here, but no, this is not the way how you want to experience PlayStation 3. The loading times are so freaking long, and then having some games are stuttering in the beginning. And I think if you're having the very cool two-dimensional games like fighting games, those will have okay, better performance. But again, I think for PlayStation 3 we just need to have way more power, and now we're finding his limitations of the Gigabyte mini PC with the i3 in the inside. Throw of the Castlevania game, you really can hear, or at least I can hear, some hiccups here and there, so it's quite unfortunate. But with these older PCs, particularly with the 6th generation, man, we're pushing it absolutely to the maximum level. You can just see compiling shaders all the time. It stutters. That's also one of the reasons why I'm guessing that the Ridge Racer game was actually not booting up at all. So when it comes to PlayStation 3 emulation, we just need to have overall better, way better performance. And I've been playing this on an i7, but most of them were like 11th generation, and they are like so much more powerful in combination with a better GPU and so PlayStation 3 is out of the question. So let's move into the PlayStation Portable. Next up, let's try a little bit of a cruise in the USA with the N64 emulator. And this has a simple reason, because this is such a difficult game to emulate on most cheap game boxes. And you know, when you just want to play these old school games, you don't want to have any stuttering, and with these mini PCs it's finally possible. And when we paid like hundreds of euros or dollars for, let's say, different kind of mini PCs back in the day, now we just have like this very cheap box that can just actually play all of these games. And what you can also do is like do a little bit of tweaking with the rendering resolution, where we can upscale it to higher resolutions and see if we can even get better performance or bad performance on high resolutions. But that's something you can do with tweaking. Native resolution, it's for me okay now. Moving on to the N64 and having the 1080p rendering resolution going on. So where the N64 doesn't run on cheap boxes, we do have great performance in native, but also can do a little bit of an upscaling with this one. I'm always fighting with my freaking controls. It is possible that some of the games will have a minor hiccup. Cruising USA is one of those great test benches that we can do. I've been testing those, let's say, games like Cruising, the Exotica, Decom Racing on the cheap boxes with native. That runs okay. But I think for N64 emulation, we just need to have a PC. Can be like an old school dual core, depending also of what kind of, let's say, wishes you personally have. So let's say if you want to have a 1080p or even 4K upscaling going on, yeah, sometimes we do need a lot of power for that. So that is one of the things you need to take consideration when getting into the N64 emulation itself. But how about Sega Saturn? I'm just going to be playing this on native resolution, because I've been seeing that it struggled a lot on the cheaper game boxes on native resolution. And now with such a cheap game box, we can actually just, or mini PC, making it a game box, and we can just play all kinds of cool games of the Sega Saturn emulator. You can always like check out if you can upscale it with some certain emulators like the Yaba Shinshiro, and just see if you can get some overall better performance. Of course, the same, there's a craziness, but some of the games are not that demanding. Think about the two-dimensional stuff. Why do I get myself shot by this guy? First thing, getting into the Sega Saturn, it seems to be that the overall emulation performance on 4K rendering resolution is possible on this mini PC. So it's also like depending what kind of emulator you're running and what kinds of GPU and CPU combination you're having. And where I found it quite disappointing with the Dreamcast and the Naomi system. But we have some good overall emulation performance on the Sega Saturn. Now using the Yaba Sensiro emulator, we also have the Beetle. So what you need to do is tweaking a little bit with those emulators and see which option is the best one for you. Because we do have so many different let's say, other systems when it comes to CPU and GPU combinations. What I love about these mini PCs is that we can have some good Sega Dreamcast emulation performance. So this time I just wanted to set it to 1080p. You can tweak, mess around with it, maybe with 2K resolution. But this just looks amazing. Having full 60 FPS, no stuttering so far I have seen with Dead Alive 2. So this is just great. 720p at this point, simply because I've been messing with the different emulators, different settings. With upscaling, this PC don't really want to work with me when it comes to, let's say, some Dreamcast platforms. Where we had some okay emulation performance with the Naomi system, Dreamcast is quite disappointing. So I'm guessing I still need to do a little bit of tweaking, getting the full 60 FPS without any dips whatsoever. You can see it dips to 48 frames per second. So performance-wise for upscaling, yeah. Today I'm just in the mood of, seeing how far we can push these older devices. With 4K render resolution, you can see that it dips to 45 frames per second. You can just clearly hear that it dips to 37. So it's a little bit too much for this PC. Even this is the faster version. It doesn't matter. We do need a little bit of downscaling. No 4K. Then we're going to be having overall better performance. Quite disappointing, but there is nothing to do about it. But you don't want to tinker, you don't want to add in GPU, but you didn't really like those Gigabyte Bricks Intel devices. There is still one solution, and maybe the best, let's say, affordable solution out there if you can find this thing for cheap. So this is a really old AMD Ryzen version. And what I love about these Ryzen, they come with a pretty good GPU on board. Meaning that we can do really good overall emulation, but also we can do some little bit of an upscaling. And I think that makes this maybe one of the best budget solutions out there. So a super easy way to play, but also an affordable way to play. But I'm always failing with this game. Yep, I'm always losing. They, by the way, ported this to the Sega Saturn, where I actually played it for the first time. And later on an older Xbox, I was just playing this in the MAME emulator. Such a cool game that you absolutely need to try if you're a big fan of the fighting game franchises. All famous game, the Mortal Kombat, like the one that I always tested out on those freaking Pandora's boxes. And that was like a hit or miss situation. But I think it's a little bit more demanding than other games, and that was one of the reasons. However, this runs without any problem whatsoever. Okay, what I'm going to do now is kicking her very slowly and very carefully. Yeah, but it runs perfectly. So let's move on to the more demanding Tekken games. But also this runs without any problem whatsoever. And yeah, man, it's just a lot of cool games that you can just play now. And that for a mini PC that doesn't cost a lot of money. It's just fun to deep dive through, let's say, all of these games where we had so many struggles with or couldn't even play on those very cheap basic games. It's a cool but weird overall experience, where a lot of the games are, of course, similar to the arcades. Some are slightly, different, where they have lower quality. I will not say that, but having maybe less sprites and stuff like that. But over this Aero Fighters 2 game seems to be looking quite nice. And seeing a lot of, let's say, cheap game boxes is Panasonic 3DO. And none of them, or most of them, are not able to run 3DO on full 60 frames per second. Where a game like Road Rash actually playing now, this is a game that's been ported to many different systems. So don't really need this to have it running on the Panasonic 3DO, but I think it's quite a good port when you're looking at it. I'm going to be looking into some more old school stuff. Yeah, the PC Engine is one of those systems. We can play it on many different, let's say, game sticks nowadays, so that's not going to be the reason you need to build a PC like this. But this has so many very cool games. So when I understand of what's like in the time era of the 8-bit systems, but this thing has so many cool games that looks just amazing. And Jackie Chan was one of those games I was playing. I discovered it, like I say, many years ago. So first off, let's do a little bit of rendering resolution of 1920 by 4040, if I'm saying it correctly. So it's going to be some next level when it comes to that. See how far we can push it, and do we have a stable frame rate. Because of course we can do a little bit tweaking, we can even do a little bit more upscaling, but also downscale everything. However, let's get into some gaming. So a native resolution, this runs on many different mini PCs nowadays, so that's absolutely awesome. But one of the more appealing things with this AMD mini PC, that we do have upscaling. and the 64 looks absolutely great. With the Dolphin emulator and some GameCube, I just want to do something completely crazy. Where this is a really old specification of a CPU-GPU combination, we're going to be trying some 4K rendering resolution. But you can just hear with Soul Calibur that it struggles big time. It is playable to a certain level, but you know, this is one of those great examples, dipping to 45 frames per second. So what you can also do is getting into, let's say, higher settings if you just want to tinker with it. Same story, like I told you a couple of times now, is that depending on what kind of game you want to play, maybe the two-dimensional game is even less demanding and we can have it higher than 4K. But so far this looks just great. The game has never been looked so great, and then for such a low-powered mini PC. And that, I think it has to do thanks to the GPU, because this gives us so many cool new upscaling options. Dolphin, but also the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 and many other systems. After a couple of times of trying to boot up the game, because in the loading it just froze up. But let's get into the gaming and let's see how the overall gameplay will be. But the overall emulation performance is surprisingly good. However, we do have very long loading times getting into the games, of course depending how big the game is itself. But with this game, yeah, we did have a little bit of a problem with that. However, in the game everything looks fast. But when it comes to, let's say, playing and just want to have overall better experience in PlayStation 3, you need to take consideration to get a more powerful PC itself. I've been trying out many different AMD Ryzen ones. And yeah, with more cores and more threads, we have like overall so many better performance. But of course, with a low power device like this, it's just amazing that we can actually even play PlayStation 3 now. Quite difficult one to play and emulate. We can do it on this mini PC without any problem whatsoever. So if Die Hard Trilogy works, there are many games that will run just fine. And think about if you're going to be using a two-dimensional game, that will be maybe have the option, if it's possible in emulator, we can even do it a little bit, maybe an upscaling to higher resolutions. But the Sega Saturn runs absolutely awesome through the Yamaha Zero emulator. There are many affordable ways to play when it comes to retro emulation. We can just get yourself an old PC, you can build something yourself. If you're not tech savvy, you can just grab something fairly easy where you can just plug in, let's say, a GPU. But if you don't really care about all of those things, there are like really cool mini PC solutions out there that supports a lot of games and including a little bit of an upscaling. Thank you all for watching, consider subscribing, and it will be great to see you in the next video.